Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 16 for key game picks. Before we talk about my picks for Week 16, quick thoughts from Week 15 prior to that, and also if you guys have been watching my videos, text graphic will be posted up for the current playoff seedings 1 through 6 in both the AFC and NFC conference. Part of that I want to talk about is basically what happened from Week 15, and basically Week 15 was probably maybe the craziest week in the NFL. I mean, look at what happened. The Chargers went in and beat the Chiefs in their building in the second half after trailing by 14. You got the Cowboys losing to the Colts, getting shut out big time. You got the Bears doing a number on the Packers, which looks like this may be the end. The Packers are already eliminated, but this could be the end of an era for this Packer team. The way it's looking right now, it don't matter who they hire as their next coach. And you got the Steelers finally getting off the schneid, beating the Patriots. And also, the Saints barely beating the Panthers. So you could say that it really was an interesting week. And it really shaped up a lot of the playoff seedings right now. And I also forgot to mention, big upset win for the Eagles over the Rams, which now the Rams have a ton of questions on their offense right now. And this may, as you know, the late Dennis Green would say, maybe the Rams are who we thought they were, maybe one-dimensional. But really, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in these next 2 weeks. And especially towards Week 17, which we may not know for a lot of playoffs, clinchers, or eliminations yet. And before I get into my picks, I want to keep you guys in mind about next week's video, which is, I have to say, it is really not my favorite video to do, is Week 17. Now, I know a lot of you saying, shouldn't you be excited for Week 17? Of course I'm excited about Week 17. But when I do the special edition video, a lot of it depends on if there's any key games that week. And I have to go over playoff scenarios and all that, which really you could just do online or anything. It's just that the video tends to be long and tedious, and it's really probably, out of all the videos I do during the regular season when I talk about football picks, it's not my favorite one, because the video is probably the longest out of every video I do all season, and sometimes it's really, I get tired, But let's just wait and see what happens in Week 16. Hopefully next week's video won't be long and tedious. But we'll know for sure if this week will be some playoff clinchers, and probably I won't have to talk about that much. But usually when I do my special edition video, usually are just special predictions. There could be a key game that I may talk about, but we'll wait and see what happens next week. Anyways, let's just get on to Week 16. All right? All right, here are the 4 key games for week number 16. Let's begin with key game number 1, one of the Saturday games. It is the Ravens versus the Chargers. Current lines for this game, the Chargers are believe it or not, Chargers are 4.5 point favorite in this one, and that number should be lower. And let me tell you why. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they are a completely different football team from when Joe Flacco was quarterback. And we pretty much have seen the last of Joe Flacco in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. I think it's obvious that he's going to be a free agent regardless. And we're going to see him going somewhere else. I mean, he had a good run with the Ravens. He led them to a Super Bowl. But obviously, the league is changing so much, and Lamar Jackson is one of these players that's going to help evolve this Ravens team for the future. Now, speaking of Lamar Jackson, 14 of 23, 131 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions in the game last week against in a big win last week. And for the Chargers in that big win, for Rivers, he went 26 of 38, 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions. Now this is one thing I always keep in mind in any quarterback, is really how many interceptions did they throw in that game? 2 of them. Look, the Chargers in their last 3 games, 2 of those games they've trailed twice. And a lot of it was due to Rivers throwing interceptions. This is a big game for both these 2 teams for a couple of reasons. Number one, for Baltimore, they want to try to catch up to the Steelers, because the Steelers have a big game with the Saints, and that's another game I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. This is big for Baltimore and all that, because this may be their best chance to overtake the Steelers, because even though the Steelers' big win last week over the Patriots, they're still in danger of missing the postseason if they lose to the Saints and Baltimore beats the Chargers. Couple things to keep in mind for the Chargers defense here. They better figure out Lamar Jackson. This is the first time they're going to face him, and the Chargers defense, one of their weakest links right now. A lot of people say they're good at stopping the run. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Lamar Jackson once he's out of the pocket. That is one key thing the Chargers defense need to keep in mind in this game. Chargers may be a 4.5-point favorite, but that number should be lower because you don't know what this Ravens team, and the Ravens are fighting for their playoff lines. They're barely clinging on to that last playoff spot with the Colts only one game. They're tied with the Colts, even though the Ravens hold the tiebreaker. Tough to say right now who wins this game. This is definitely a tough pick here. Should be a good football game. But if the Chargers defense can really hold Lamar Jackson in that offense here, I like the Chargers in this game. I'm going to pick the Chargers here. It's going to be a close game. Very, very close game. A game that the Chargers really need to have to put the pressure on KC, maybe to overtake them in the division because KC faces Seattle, and that is another game I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So yeah, this is big for the Chargers and big for the Ravens. Both the Chargers have already clinched, but regardless of what happens here, they may be locked into the 5 seed, but for the Ravens here, they're trying to lock that 6 seed and hopefully keep the pressure on Pittsburgh, especially as they face the Saints. But for this game here, I think the Chargers win this game. That may help out Pittsburgh here regardless here. I think the Chargers will probably win by a field goal. Expect this game to be close. Probably going to be low scoring. And I'm going to stick with that pick here. I think the Chargers win by a field goal. Chargers over the Ravens. Key game number 2, the Houston Texans versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are a 1-point favorite in this game. Really, I think the Texans should be favored in this game. Regardless of what Nick Foles did against the Rams in a game that they desperately had to have, when they had to try to keep the pressure on the Cowboys. But the only reason why I'm saying, look, this is just opinionated. Eagles are favored by 1. The lines may be even by kickoff. The problem here is that it is not, and I'm not talking about in this game at all. The Cowboys got the Buccaneers. The Cowboys may clinch the division here. But the reason why this is a key game for Philadelphia, let's just say the Cowboys choke against the Buccaneers. Philly needs this game to be tied for the division because Week 17 would be probably their last hope to win that division because I don't know if they're going to cling on. I don't know if they're going to try to fight their way to the 6th seed. Minnesota, they really dominated the Dolphins last week, and the Vikings kind of have a favorable schedule they have a favorable game coming up except for Week 17 when they got to face the Bears. But going back to Houston and Philly. Now, Watson, 22-28, 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Big win over the Jets last week. And then the Eagles, in the big upset win over the Rams. Nick Foles went 24-31, 270 yards, no touchdowns, but 1 interception. This game could not be more evenly matched for both these two teams. Houston, with a win here, would wrap up the AFC South or an Indianapolis loss. But if I'm the Texans here, the way the Colts are playing right now, this is a game the Texans have to have. Otherwise, it will put more pressure on the Texans down the stretch because Indy actually would hold the tiebreaker against them. Really tough to say who wins this game here. Obviously, ball control and time of possession is big in this game here. This game's in Philly, so it's cold. Houston has to have a chance here. And the way the Texans are playing right now, this is going to be a very close game all the way. Tough to say here. But I'm going to go with the Texans here. I think the Texans got to play like a desperate football team here. Philly also has to play desperate too because both of these two teams have playoff implications on the line here. But I think Houston is going to go into Philly despite the cold weather. I think they're going to upset Philly here. I think they're going to get the win here and wrap up the AFC South. This game could go either way in all honesty because weather's always a factor, especially for teams that either play in a dome or they play in warm climates. But I think Houston will go into Philly, barely win that game, probably by maybe 1 point or by a field goal here. This game is going to be very close, and it definitely puts the pressure on Philly and hoping that the Buccaneers beat the Cowboys, but I just don't see it happening here. I'm going to go with the Texans here. I think the Texans will wrap up the AFC South here. Texans over the Eagles. Key game number 3, the Pittsburgh Steelers against the New Orleans Saints. Saints are 6-point favorite in this one. the way they played against the Panthers, that number should be much lower. A lot of questions regarding their offense here. Drew Brees had probably maybe his worst game of the season, even though they won. And Pittsburgh, they had to play like a desperate football team, and they're going to play like a desperate football team in this game in that dome. The Saints obviously are fighting for home field advantage, but truthfully here, Saints actually don't need this game, in all honesty. They're well ahead in the NFC seedings here. They pretty much will, I still think they'll wrap up the number 1 seed because the Rams, they cannot take the Cardinals and the 49ers lightly because those two teams can push them out of the 2 seed and maybe into the 3 seed. So it's tough to say right now for the Rams here. But going back to this game, the Saints really don't need this game, in all honesty. But Pittsburgh does. The Steelers need this game not only to keep ahead of Baltimore, but to put even more pressure on the Patriots to keep them to the 3 seed, maybe put them down to the 4 seed. Roethlisberger in that big win over the Patriots, 22 of 34, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Breeze went 23 of 35, 203 yards. The key stat in here, no touchdowns because they were all field goals in this game, and 1 interception. Saints are a 6-point favorite, as I said. The number should be much lower. Pittsburgh needs this game badly right now. But if I say here right now for the Saints here, they obviously don't need this game because I think Week 17 they'll wrap up the number 1 seed there because the Rams, even if they tie the Saints here, the Saints own the tiebreaker regardless. But for all intents purposes here, and I'm actually going to go another upset here. I actually am going to pick the Steelers here. I think the Steelers will win this game because they know the pressure's on them. And they have got to beat the Saints here in this game in order to maintain that lead in their own division. And as I said, this is just opinionated. The Saints really don't need this game, in all honesty. It's really in Week 17, that's the game they have to have. And they get the Panthers again. And they know that. And they know that Cam Newton is hurt. And especially in a game where they can not only get that first round bye, but also to clinch number 1 seed, just to basically finish this whole thing. Remember, the Saints are well ahead of everybody in the NFC right now. So, Pittsburgh really is the team that has to have this game, and I'm picking the Steelers here. They know the pressures, they have more of the pressure than any other football team right now in the AFC conference. It'll be a close game. I think this game will be close. But if Pittsburgh's running game continues to do well, Saints, and a lot of people say Saints can stop the run very well. I don't know against the Steelers here, even though I know that Connor may not be available for this game, but the way they ran the ball against the Patriots last week, I like the Steelers in this one here. I think I'm definitely picking the Steelers here in a very close game. Pittsburgh by a field goal. Steelers over the Saints. And finally, key game number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Seattle Seahawks. This is a must-win for Kansas City. As much as this is a game for Seattle, in all honesty, Seattle really doesn't need this game as well either. But obviously, the pressure is on them for Minnesota because they could flip that 5 seed, put the Seahawks at the 6 seed. Kansas City, they want to wrap up the AFC West in this game. But if the Chargers do beat the Ravens, that puts more pressure on them Sunday night. Now the Chiefs are a 2.5-point favorite in this one. That number should be 1.5 because when you're playing against Seattle, especially in their building, they are good at home. Their only terrible loss Seattle's had at home was really against the Chargers. Now Mahomes last week against the Chargers, 24 of 34, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Wilson went 23 of 31, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions, even though they got upset by the 49ers. This game is tough. This is a tough pick here. Both these two teams, really right now, it's good. This game can go either way. I think this game's going to go back and forth here. Seattle's defense is actually just a tad better, just a little bit better than the Chiefs. But the big key thing is they get Perry back, and I think Perry's going to have a much better game than he did last week against the Chargers because Perry didn't play all that well last week against the Chargers, which led to the Chargers' comeback last week. And this is a game I think Perry has to that Perry in the backfield has to play very well to help that Chiefs defense out big time. This is really a tough pick here. offense really has to come alive, and basically who doesn't turn the ball over in this game. That's key here. But I have to make a pick here. I'm actually going to pick the Chiefs. Their offense is much better than Seattle's. But Seattle's defense is good, and they may be able to stop the run. But you just don't know with Patrick Mahomes. He's so good once he's out of the pocket. You don't know if he's going to run or throw an amazing pass. And Seattle's defense, I don't know if they're going to be ready for that. I don't think they may be able to match that. And that is why I'm picking the Chiefs in a very, very low-scoring close game here. Probably maybe like 17-14. I'm going to pick the Chiefs in this one here. I think they know they need this game. The Chargers are right on their tail, and the number 1 seed is also on the line here as well. And I think the Chiefs get the win here, which puts more pressure on Seattle and could really help the Minnesota Vikings out to overtake that 5 seed, even though, because of that because of that tie game that Minnesota had with Green Bay, which may help them out here. And that is why I'm going to pick the Chiefs here. I think the Chiefs here will put as much pressure. They need this game a lot more than Seattle does in order to hold that number 1 seed. And that is what I'm going to go with. The Chiefs over the Seahawks. And that wraps up my picks for week number 16. As I mentioned earlier in the video, next week is my week 17 special edition video. Hopefully, it won't be a long video next week. Hopefully, we'll have some small scenarios and maybe throw in a key game. We'll wait and see what happens and one of my cardinal rules is when I do this video is that I always say in the beginning of that week 17 video, anything can happen in week 17. I'll see you guys next week. All of my week 16 picks are in the description below. And I'll talk to you guys next week when we talk about the final week of the regular season in week number 17. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.